You have been listening to the Salasina YouTube channel. The Curses of the Ages, 10 of history's most infamous hexes. Can a mere object, for all its dazzling beauty, harbor the power to bring ruin? The answer, it seems, is yes, if its history is stained by relentless misfortune. Over the centuries, certain possessions have been linked to a devastating trail of tragedy, death, illness, and ruin for nearly every soul who has possessed them. This raises a compelling question. Can even the world's most powerful leaders be forced to live in constant fear? The late President John F. Kennedy, who famously advised, "We should not let our fears hold us back from pursuing our hopes," once embodied the very refusal to be ruled by dread, implicitly asserting that one must face their destiny head-on. But what if these misfortunes are not just coincidence? What if the gods, or some other ancient power, seek to punish mortals? These are not mere curses on individuals. Sometimes, the sins of one are believed to bring punishment upon all of humanity. Will you believe in curses? Perhaps nothing is truly impossible. In the stories that follow, we will examine 10 of the most unbelievable curses to have allegedly afflicted mankind. Ancient influence and the cursed hope diamond. From the dawn of time, both mortals and deities have uttered curses intended to inflict harm on others. One such hex is rumored to be the source from which all other curses are derived, an ancient malediction that continues to influence millions of lives around the globe. The curse of a hope diamond. Even in the 21st century, the power of these primitive threats continues to captivate and terrify. When people look for a pattern in a string of tragic events, a curse offers a powerful explanation, granting a semblance of order and control over an unpredictable world. Join us as we explore the most remarkable curses of all time. Curse number 10, the Hope Diamond. Our journey into the world of curses begins in the nation's capital. Washington, D.C. Inside the renowned Smithsonian Institution resides a glittering source of misery, a cursed object that has tracked its owners across centuries and continents. The Hope Diamond is the museum's most popular exhibit, captivating over 6 million people annually. This stunning 45.52-carat blue diamond is one of the largest blue diamonds in the world, making it a gemstone of immense historical and cultural significance. It sits surrounded by 16 white diamonds, part of a lavish necklace that features an additional 45 gems. Yet, it is not merely the diamond's beauty that draws visitors. Legend holds that the stone is cursed, bringing disaster to nearly every person who has owned it. Its proprietors have allegedly been afflicted by untimely death, severe illness, madness, and terrible accidents. Many believe the curse began in the 17th century when French jewel merchant Jean-Baptiste Tavernier discovered the immense rough gem. According to the most popular account, he stole the blue diamond from a Hindu deity's sculpture in an Indian temple. The act of sacrilege is said to have triggered a powerful curse on any mortal who should possess the stolen stone. The jewel was eventually acquired by King Louis XIV of France, who had it cut and named it the French Blue Diamond. It certainly brought no luck to its new royal owner. It remained part of the French crown jewels until 1792, when it was stolen during the chaos of the French Revolution. The diamond later surfaced in London, where Henry Philip Hope purchased it in 1812, giving the diamond the name it carries today. It remained with the Hope family until 1901. Early in the 20th century, the famous French jeweler Pierre Cartier acquired the stone. When he sold it to the American heiress Evelyn Walsh McLean, he felt compelled to issue a warning about the gem's dark reputation. "Madam," Cartier is rumored to have said, "I must tell you something about this diamond. It is said to bring bad luck." Evelyn McLean's retort was legendary. "Mr. Cartier, I'll tell you something. Objects like that bring me good luck." At the time of the purchase, Evelyn was considered one of the luckiest women in Washington. She was married to billionaire Edward McLean, heir to the Washington Post publishing fortune. Evelyn wore the necklace constantly, but before long, her life took a devastating turn. Despite her immense wealth, Evelyn led a profoundly unhappy existence. In a life of luxury, She was struck by tragedy after tragedy. Her son was killed in a car accident. Her daughter committed suicide. Her husband descended into madness and died in an asylum. Evelyn herself passed away at the relatively young age of 60, still wearing the Hope diamond around her neck. The diamond was then purchased by New York jeweler Sir Harry Winston. His nephew, Richard, recalls his first encounter with the notorious gem. "My first thought was, it's a diamond, and it is completely blue. It was as if it spoke to you, saying, 'Look closely at me. I am famous. I demand respect.'" In the 1950s, Richard toured America with a diamond, raising money for charity. However, he soon became a believer in the curse, as tragedy seemed to follow everyone who wore it. The wealthiest man in a city brought his stunningly beautiful daughter to the exhibit, Richard recounted. "I asked her if she'd like to wear the Hope diamond to the ball. She was ecstatic. It looked magnificent on her. 2 months later, her baby died mysteriously in its crib. Her husband became an alcoholic, went insane, ended up in an asylum, and they divorced. In 1958, Sir Harry Winston donated the diamond to the Smithsonian Institution. Many believe the protective glass case not only guards the diamond from thieves, but also shields visitors from its ancient curse. Despite the universal human desire for their beauty, a number of the world's most famous diamonds are said to be cursed. The luminous Hope diamond remains one of the most malevolent of these jewels, leaving a trail of death and destruction in its wake. Curse number 9. The Evora Chapel of Bones, Portugal. Our journey now takes us across the Atlantic to Europe, specifically to the charming Portuguese town of Evora. Here, a centuries-old curse, uttered from a deathbed, has left an eerie, tangible mark for all visitors to witness. I do believe in curses. I think they can actually work on people. There has to be something to it. These skeletons are real. It's really spooky. I'm definitely going to be nice to my girlfriend, are common whispers among the tourists. In the picturesque town of Evora sits the renowned Capella dos Ossos, the Chapel of Bones, constructed by Franciscan monks in the 15th century. This seemingly ordinary church holds a truly macabre interior. Above the entrance, a chilling inscription greets all who enter. Nos ossos que aqui estamos pelos vossos esperamos. We, the bones that are here, await yours. The chapel's interior walls are not stone, but the assembled remains of over 5,000 human skeletons. The monks had a specific, profound reason for this construction. They intended the chapel to be a place for meditation on death and the brevity of life, thereby demonstrating that earthly wealth and status are meaningless. Yet, the most haunting features are not the walls of bones, but the sight of 2 complete, dried corpses hanging from the wall. Local legend provides a horrifying account of how these bodies came to be there, a tale wrapped up in one of the most powerful forms of ancient black magic, the deathbed curse. The power of a dying person's curse may lie in the overwhelming sense of guilt and remorse felt by those who were abusive in life, a psychological torment brought on by their past misdeeds. The Portuguese folklore tells the story of a devout Catholic woman cruelly tormented by her own husband and son. One day, the husband was overcome by a fit of rage, during which he allegedly beat his wife to death. As she lay dying, the woman placed a curse upon the 2 men. She proclaimed that they would soon follow her to the grave, that their souls would go straight to hell for their mistreatment of her, and that the earth would never accept their bodies. As the woman foretold, both men soon died. When the townsfolk attempted to bury them, the ground reportedly turned to stone, making it impossible to dig a grave. The monks, seeing this as the fulfillment of the curse, hung their bodies in the chapel. Local historian Labanio Rees believes the monks displayed the corpses as a moral lesson. The fundamental message of the curse, he suggests, is that women must be treated with respect and seen as equals. Remarkably, the precise reason the bodies were so well preserved remains a mystery. Even the chapel curator admits to a lack of knowledge. I've been here for 30 years, and I've never seen anyone examine the bodies, so I don't know if they were mummified or not. The Chapel of Bones in Evora is a shocking spectacle, and a chilling story of a curse that carries a universal message about how we treat our fellow human beings. Curse number 8. The Scottish play, Macbeth, London. Our journey now takes us beneath the dazzling lights of London's theatre district. Behind the makeup and costumes lurks a curse so feared that simply uttering the name of Shakespeare's play can send even the most hardened actors fleeing from the building. They cannot say Macbeth, can they? They have to say the Scottish play. Backstage, I would not dare say Macbeth. Out here and in the foyer, it's fine, but backstage, the word Macbeth will bring you bad luck. 12 million patrons visit London's theaters annually, drawn by the vibrant diversity of the West End. But backstage, before a performance of Macbeth, the actors fear more than just forgetting a line. Speaking the play's title is said to unleash terrible misfortune, not just upon the cast, but on the entire production team. The curse has struck some of the most famous names in theater. In the 1930s, a stage wait narrowly missed Laurence Olivier while he was performing. 3 actors died in a production featuring John Gielgud, and the stage manager committed suicide. The curse is rumored to stem from the famous witches scene. Shakespeare allegedly incorporated real curses and actual black magic rituals into his script. Real witches of the time were not pleased to have their secrets revealed in such a public manner. Enraged that Shakespeare had exposed their trade, the witches supposedly placed a curse on every production of the play. The first misfortune occurred at the premiere itself. An actor named Hallber suddenly became ill, developed a fever, and died backstage that very night. William Shakespeare himself was forced to step in and take the role. Since Macbeth's debut nearly 4 centuries ago, a complete catalog of death and disaster has accumulated. Actors worry that it's a physically demanding play, full of intense fight and combat scenes, making it inherently dangerous. The stories of the curse's effect are unbelievable. The most famous confirmed incident of the Macbeth curse took place in a northern English theatre in 1947. The lead, Harold Norman, was performing a dueling scene when a safety guard fell off one of the swords. Unaware, Norman continued to spar with his opponent on stage. The audience enthusiastically applauded what they believed was a stunningly realistic performance. Backstage, however, they realized Norman had been fatally stabbed. He succumbed to his injury 3 weeks later. Fortunately, there is a ritual to reverse the accidental utterance of the forbidden word. If you commit the unforgivable sin of saying the play's name or quoting from it, the first thing you must do is immediately leave the room. Once outside, you must spin around 3 times, spit curse, knock on the door, and wait until you are invited back inside. The next time you attend a Shakespearean tragedy, remember the drama playing out backstage, where actors constantly contend with the notorious curse of Macbeth. Curse number 7. Aleister Crowley and Loch Ness. We now travel to the mysterious shores of Loch Ness in Scotland, home to one of Britain's most infamous occultists. This is a tale of black magic and alleged devil worship. Loch Ness is a place shrouded in mystery. After all, the mythical Loch Ness monster is said to reside in its depths. Yet, some tourists are drawn by a different kind of legend. A visit to the former home of Britain's most notorious occultist, Aleister Crowley. Crowley was known for calling himself the wickedest man in the world, and the Great Beast 666, a nickname his own mother allegedly gave him. In 1899, Crowley took up residence at the remote Boleskine House on the southern bank of Loch Ness. He was an alleged expert in black magic, claiming in his diaries to have summoned 115 different spirits in and around the house. He created a terrifying atmosphere that seemed to affect everyone who lived nearby. A hotel manager reportedly tried to kill his children. Crowley's coachman became a raging alcoholic, and a psychic who visited him descended into prostitution. When Crowley wasn't dabbling in the dark arts, he was an avid mountaineer. He combined these 2 passions in southern England, attempting to climb a rock formation known as the Devil's Chimney. He became enraged when he got stuck midway through his descent. In a fit of fury, he cursed the location, declaring that when the devil's chimney fell, fire and brimstone would rain down on Eastbourne and the surrounding area. The natural rock formation had stood for thousands of years. Then, in April 2001, the 80-meter-tall upper section of the cliff suddenly collapsed into the sea. Kevin Carlyon, a self-proclaimed white wizard, traveled to Eastbourne to attempt to reverse Crowley's curse. I believe that my ceremony, I call it a cleansing, but it's basically an exorcism, prevented any dark energy from being released. Aleister Crowley was the most famous practitioner of curses we've encountered on our journey so far. He was drawn to Loch Ness by forces unknown. Yet ironically, most visitors today remain enchanted by the sheer beauty of the location. Curse number 6, the Voodoo of New Orleans. Our next stop is the American capital of voodoo, New Orleans, Louisiana. The very thought of a voodoo curse is enough to send a shiver down the spine of the most adventurous traveler. We are in a city of dark secrets. Every year, 6 million tourists visit New Orleans, many driven by a desire to explore the power of voodoo. Ancient voodoo fascinates me. It's not about zombies and the things you see in horror movies. There's something to it, but I don't consider it scary, some visitors say. Voodoo is a spiritual tradition with West African roots, centered on communicating with the dead. It emerged in the United States in the 19th century, thanks largely to one of the most famous voodoo priestesses, Marie Laveau. She amassed great power and wealth in New Orleans, and locals believed she could use voodoo to bless or curse both friends and enemies. Tour guide Bloody Mary now introduces tourists to the life of Marie Laveau. This was a woman who was loved by some, hated by others, but respected by all. For most of the 19th century, she was the all-powerful queen of this town. She was called the Voodoo Pope. Marie Laveau died in 1881. Today, curious visitors make a pilgrimage to her tomb in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. Many believe that even from beyond the grave, Marie still has the power to grant wishes, provided you follow a specific voodoo ritual. One woman who believed in Marie Laveau's power allegedly won $1 million in the lottery the day after performing the ritual. Most people have less spectacular wishes, usually concerning personal matters. If you wish to ask Marie Laveau for something, you must do the following. Knock on the tomb 3 times and say, "Open the gate, Marie Laveau." Then, turn around 3 times counterclockwise. Offer the spirits rum. Mark a triple cross on the tomb, and state your request. Finally, leave a sacrifice behind. We visited a woman who practices voodoo today. In an ordinary house, High Priestess Eva K. Jones maintains an altar where she performs her rituals. She explains that voodoo is one of the most feared and most misunderstood practices. People are afraid of voodoo because they don't understand it. It has a bad reputation, and the word voodoo is used to cover almost everything. Satanism, black magic. Anything magical is considered voodoo, which is not the case. Eva believes she has the power to harm and to heal, but she will never use voodoo to curse another person. People come to me with all sorts of things. Some of them are good, and some of them are not. But I do not engage in any of the bad things, even if they ask me to, she explains. In New Orleans, you can buy voodoo tools in most shops. One of the most frequently used methods for casting a curse is to create an effigy of the intended victim. They use dolls in voodoo. These dolls are used for the purpose of damaging and perhaps killing an enemy. I don't sell them for evil purposes, but I suspect some people are not telling the truth about what they want to use them for, says a shop vendor. The voodoo doll was not originally intended to harm. Dolls were made as a model of the person you were trying to heal, and the purpose of the thorns and pins was to target a specific ailment. If a person had trouble with their stomach, a pin would be inserted there. If you are ever tempted to perform a voodoo ritual, be warned. Practitioners believe that calling evil down on another person will eventually return to curse you. Curse number 5. The Curse of King Tutankhamun, Egypt. We now leave the present day and travel deep into the past, to an almost 3,000-year-old legend of the dead seeking vengeance on the living. They say when they first opened the tomb all those years ago, a curse came down on them. I've heard rumors of archaeologists dying one by one. I definitely wouldn't go in there alone, and I wouldn't want to spend the night. Egypt, home of the pyramids, the pharaohs, and one of the most feared and debated curses of all time. The Curse of King Tutankhamun. In 1922, English archaeologist Howard Carter and his colleague, Egyptologist George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, discovered the final resting place of the young pharaoh Tutankhamun. King Tut had ascended to the throne of Egypt at the age of 8, around 1300 BC. He reigned until his sudden death at 18. His tomb was hastily prepared, filled with all the treasures he would need for the afterlife. When Carter and Herbert breached the tomb, they saw a sight no living human had seen in millennia. Carter discovered 5,000 artifacts, all crafted from gold. According to the English press at the time, Carter and Herbert were so overcome by the treasure that they ignored the 3,000-year-old warning in the hieroglyphics carved above the entrance to the chamber. Ancient Egyptians always tried to protect the tombs, leaving a warning that any disturbance would be met with punishment. The Curse of Tutankhamun was intended to bring death to anyone who violated his resting place. The pharaoh's curse seemingly struck just 7 weeks later when Herbert fell ill after a mosquito bite. He lay on his deathbed at the Continental Hotel in Cairo. At the exact moment of his passing, the entire city was plunged into darkness. At that same moment, 1,000 miles away in England, at the Earl of Carnarvon's country estate, his loyal dog began to howl uncontrollably. Servants tried in vain to silence it, but after a moment, the dog fell to the ground and died. The curse appeared to continue. Records suggest that 22 members of the archaeological team died within 7 years of the tomb's opening. Even the British Royal Air Force was reportedly affected. In the 1970s, Tutankhamun's treasures were flown to England, and the entire flight crew was allegedly struck by death, injury, and misfortune. Skeptics dismiss the deaths as mere coincidence. They point out that Howard Carter himself died 16 years after the tomb's opening at the age of 66 from natural causes. Respected Egyptologist Dr. Zahi Hawass has his own theory, suggesting that many of the deaths were caused by 3,000-year-old bacteria hidden inside the sealed tomb. Today, he takes precautions when opening newly discovered tombs. When I open a tomb, I wait 2 days. I never go in until all the bad air has been cleared and the tomb has been ventilated. I also never shave. If you shave, you are more susceptible to all the germs, he explains. Nevertheless, many still believe that the curse of Tutankhamun remains active. Writer Stuart Gordon has researched numerous strange events connected to the curse. For instance, George Leber, a guard at the San Francisco Museum of Fine Arts, suffered a heart attack and collapsed while standing watch over the burial mask. After recovering, he attempted to sue the city, claiming he had been struck down by the curse of King Tutankhamun. The story of the young pharaoh Tutankhamun has fascinated historians and Egyptologists for centuries. Thanks to its much-discussed curse, his fame has transcended the ages and continues to resonate in the 21st century. Curse number 4. The Ravens of the Tower of London. We now head to the heart of the United Kingdom, to the Tower of London. Given the centuries of gruesome murder and torture that have occurred within its walls, it is little surprise that this historic site is cursed. This is a malediction so powerful it is said to threaten the very destruction of the city. They have to keep the ravens, otherwise the main tower will fall down. It's a strange story, but you never know. If I saw the ravens flying away, I'd probably get out of here quickly, visitors often remark. Most visitors see the local ravens as just some large black birds, but others believe they represent the tower's most important attraction. Legend holds that if the ravens ever leave, the Great White Tower will crumble, and with it, the entire kingdom and the monarchy will fall. No one knows the exact origin of the raven curse. The first recorded mention was during the reign of King Charles II in the 17th century. The king was speaking with an astronomer, asking how his observations were progressing. The astronomer complained that the ravens were interfering. "They're fat and won't go away," he grumbled, asking the king if they could be removed. The king initially agreed, but then someone reminded him of the ancient legend. And so, it was the observatory, not the ravens, that moved out of the tower. That observatory is now the one in Greenwich. The ravens were then protected by a royal decree, and their well-being remains a matter of monarchical health to this day. If a raven dies, the queen is informed immediately by the Raven Master. A replacement is sourced as quickly as possible. The ravens enjoy royal privileges even in death. When a raven passes, a funeral is held in a small cemetery on the moat. Near the drawbridge, a small memorial lists the names of ravens that have died in the last 50 years. There must always be 8 ravens in residence. Several spares are kept on standby in case of sudden death. Most are in Scotland, with 3 or 4 in a rehabilitation centre in Lincolnshire. Derek Coyle serves as the personal assistant to the tower's main stars. "I am responsible for absolutely everything to do with the ravens, their health, their daily feeding. I calm them down when they get scared. I treat them when they are a little sick," he describes his job. Every morning, the Raven Master releases the birds from their roost. Part of his job is to act as a raven himself. "I am the leader of the flock. They think I'm a big raven. Cedric is dominant, and sometimes he challenges me. I stand over him and spread my arms as if I had wings. He immediately realizes who the boss is and begins to obey," Coyle explains. The ravens also receive special veterinary care at the London Zoo. When a raven falls ill, Derek Coyle contacts them. The worst thing would be an epidemic where they all die, or if someone poisoned them. The royal family would be gone by the next day, he worries. Veterinarian Wayne Boardman calls them the most pampered birds in the world. "It's like us spending our lives on a tropical island with the Raven Master as our personal butler. They live an excessive life. But it's not just the 5-star comfort that keeps the ravens at the tower. Their wingtips are routinely clipped. This prevents them from gaining enough altitude to fly away. However, the Raven Master's fear that his charges will attempt an escape does not end there. Whenever it's windy, the ravens get a bit of a lift. I'm often terrified that they will manage to lift above the wall and fly away," Derek Coyle confides. The Tower of London has been a part of British royal history for centuries. Were it not for the resident ravens, an ancient curse might destroy both the city and the monarchy itself. Curse number 3. The lead curse tablets, Greece and Rome. Our focus now shifts to the ancient world, where mortals called upon the gods to cast curses on their enemies. Our journey begins in ancient Greece. This is the Acropolis of Athens, a remarkable monument to the achievements of an ancient civilization that flourished 2,500 years ago. The Greeks were famous as academics and athletes. Their legacy is everywhere, from democracy to the Olympic Games. Today, however, we focus on their darker side. We associate ancient Greece with the birthplace of logic, philosophy, and things like that. Definitely not with magic and witchcraft. Yet, archaeologists have found evidence that the Greeks practiced black magic. Excavations in the Agora, the ancient Athenian marketplace, uncovered dozens of thin, inscribed lead tablets. The ancient Greeks called them katadesmoi, meaning curses. These tablets were placed in the coffin of a deceased person. This not only sent the curse deeper into the earth, but was also meant to accompany the spirit of the deceased into the underworld, where it would serve as a special delivery. The ancient Greeks believed the gods of the underworld would read the tablet and carry out the curse. The tablets reappeared in the 1st century, this time prepared by the Romans. They used a different portal to send their curses to the gods of the afterlife. Water. Today, we toss coins into water for good luck, and it has been so since ancient times. But the Romans tossed 12,000 coins into the hot springs at the city of Bath, partly to harm someone. Water served as a channel of communication with the spirit world. And the Romans did not only wish for their own well-being, but also to harm their enemies. The Roman baths in the English city of Bath were built in the 1st century. It is here that evidence was found proving that the Romans were also accomplished casters of hexes. The tablets were discovered during excavations between 1979 and 1981, which included uncovering the sacred spring. More than 100 curse tablets were found in total. Scientists who studied the tablets believe they contain certain common phrases. They contain a rough formula, possibly asking for advice from magical assassins, malevolent sorcerers, masters of their craft, for tips on how to improve their lives. The recipient was Minerva, the Roman goddess of water. These were no humble requests. The basic principle of the curse is, when you kill, kill thoroughly. So you don't just curse the person involved, but their relatives too. You don't just say, I hope something happens to them. You hope their bones turn to water, or that they dry up like autumn leaves. During Roman rule in Britain, cursing thieves was particularly popular. One of the tablets excavated in the baths was written by a Roman named Docilianus. Before taking a bath, he set aside his clothes, and someone stole his hooded cloak. An enraged Docilianus wrote a curse tablet and threw it into the sacred spring, hoping the goddess of water would take revenge on the thief. Today, experts suggest these curses were indeed highly effective, but for psychological, not supernatural reasons. If you find out that someone has cursed you and a powerful entity is after you, you have an urge to panic. You are more susceptible to illness. Maybe you just return the stolen loot, they explain. The remarkable curse tablets of the ancient Greeks and Romans have survived for centuries, revealing that even the most sophisticated civilizations were not immune to the temptation of laying a curse. Curse number 2. The presidential death cycle, Washington, D.C. We now return to Washington, D.C., to the halls of American power, the White House. Here, we find that even the highest office in the nation is said to be struck by a curse, one specifically intended to bring harm to U.S. leaders. Since 1800, the White House has been the official residence of the American president. In the 1960s, it was the final home for the 35th president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. The Kennedys were one of America's most powerful and influential families, but also one of its unluckiest. Joseph Kennedy had 4 sons. 3 of them died violent deaths. Joe Jr. fell in World War II, JFK was assassinated in 1963, and Robert Kennedy was also assassinated in 1968. Some speculate that JFK foresaw his own death. One day, sitting in his car, a small boy aimed a camera at him. Kennedy flinched, then said, "I will not live in fear. What is supposed to happen will happen." But there is a far more controversial theory, the presidential death cycle. This theory holds that presidents elected in years ending in a 0 will die in office. And it is not just a baseless theory. The case of Kennedy speaks for itself. This curse is attributed to a Native American revenge. The famous Shawnee chief, Tecumseh, had sought to protect his people from encroachment by white settlers in the Ohio Valley. War broke out. When Tecumseh was killed in 1813, his brother, Tenskwatawa, a religious prophet, allegedly placed a curse on American presidents. The first alleged victim was William Henry Harrison, the general who led the U.S. forces against Tecumseh. Harrison was elected president in 1840. He delivered the longest inaugural address in history on a very cold, rainy day. He wore no overcoat, caught a cold, and died of pneumonia 1 month after his inauguration. The cycle continued. 1860, Abraham Lincoln elected, assassinated. 1880, James Garfield elected, assassinated. 1900, William McKinley elected, assassinated. 1920, Warren G. Harding elected, died suddenly of a heart attack 3 years later. 1940, Franklin Delano Roosevelt elected for a 3rd term, died in office in 1945 of a cerebral hemorrhage. 1960, JFK elected, assassinated. The pattern held until 1980 and the election of Ronald Reagan. In 1981, John Hinckley Jr. fired 6 shots at the president outside the Washington Hilton Hotel, hitting 4 people, including Reagan. All miraculously survived the assassination attempt. You could say he was lucky, is a common speculation. If Hinckley had used a more effective weapon, Reagan certainly wouldn't have defeated the curse. Skeptics, however, claim it is simply a string of coincidences. People look for connections in strange events. They want to explain them to feel they can control the world. And when something bad happens, they immediately look for an appropriate explanation, they state. Yet, it is an undeniable fact that a disturbing number of American presidents have met with an unexpected, tragic fate. Is the presidential death cycle to blame? Curse number 1. The Garden of Eden, the Middle East. We conclude our journey with the ultimate curse, one as old as mankind itself. We travel to the Middle East to revisit the Old Testament story of creation and the expulsion from paradise. We seek to discover the very place where humanity was condemned to eternal struggle. The Middle East countries include Israel, Jordan, and Egypt. This region is the setting for stories from both the Old and New Testaments. Archaeologists hope to verify and better understand these stories. For most Bible readers, visiting these places is deeply significant because this is where the biblical events took place. Scholars have dissected every sentence of the Old and New Testaments for centuries. One of the most fascinating biblical narratives is God's curse on humanity. The Bible contains a number of God's curses. If you break the laws, you will suffer a heavy penalty. You can read about hundreds of these curses in the Bible, say theologians. For example, in the book of Genesis, God curses Cain. Cain was a farmer and his brother Abel a shepherd. Cain was jealous, believing God favored Abel. So, Cain murdered his brother. The rivalry between the siblings ended in fratricide. God asked Cain, "Where is your brother?" Cain replied, "Am I my brother's keeper?" God said, "I hear his blood calling out to me from the ground." God cursed Cain, turning him into a wanderer. According to experts, this curse had profound consequences. The story of Cain and Abel reveals the dark side of humanity, the fact that violence is a part of our nature. We are all descendants of Cain and Abel, researchers summarize. The most fundamental example of a curse, of course, is at the beginning of Genesis, where God punishes Cain's parents, Adam and Eve. The expulsion from paradise is the most famous story of its kind because it is absolutely essential. All other curses and punishments seem to stem from this original one. Genesis states that God created the world in 6 days and created Adam in his own image. From Adam's rib, he created the woman Eve and allowed them to live in the Garden of Eden. God explained that they could eat anything except the fruit from the tree of knowledge. If they tasted the apple, they would die. However, the serpent whispered to Eve that they would not die, but would gain knowledge of all things. Eve could not resist the temptation and then offered the apple to Adam. As soon as they finished the apple, they realized they were naked. This is a reference to the loss of innocence. They were as innocent as the animals wandering the Garden of Eden, and suddenly they became aware of themselves and their own mortality, experts explain. God was furious. He not only banished them from paradise, but also pronounced specific curses on each of them. First, he cursed the serpent, who started it all, to crawl on its belly forever. Eve's curse was the agony of childbirth. Adam was forced to work the ground to feed himself. Some scholars view this as a mythical story to help us better understand ourselves. The story of the Garden of Eden is about human nature, how we live, and how we act. We are all subject to the temptation to know things that we know are dangerous. We feel the urge to go against commands, they argue. David Rohl, an expert in biblical history, believes the Garden of Eden truly existed. I have been studying biblical history and archaeology for 20 years. I dedicated 5 of those years to the Garden of Eden, he says. David first looked for clues directly in the Old Testament. Genesis says that 4 rivers flowed in paradise: the Euphrates, Tigris, Gihon, and Pishon. We know where the Euphrates and Tigris are. So, when you find their source, you find yourself in the Garden of Eden. This is an area on the border of eastern Turkey and western Iran, Roll specifies. However, when David arrived at the location of the presumed paradise, he was disappointed. Today, there's the big city of Tabriz. It is located in a beautiful valley, but there is a lot of industry and a large population. But 5,000 years ago, it was a much more fertile area, he notes. Whatever the likelihood of Eden's existence, these curses have had an enormous effect, influencing the lives of millions. The 2 most powerful curses that span the centuries are the condemnations of Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel. The curse did not affect just the individuals, but all of mankind. Humanity suffers for the sins of these individuals. Many believe that curse number 1 will last forever, as people will always suffer for the original transgression. Our journey around the world has uncovered tales of tragedy, greed, and temptation. Curses seem to have accompanied our lives since the beginning of time, and there is no indication that their power is waning, at least in the way they continue to terrify and fascinate us. You have been listening to the Shalasina YouTube channel.